The rain had teeth that night. It bit through the threadbare hoodie of the girl crouched beside the bakery's dumpster, her small hands clawing at the lid like a starved animal. A single street lamp flickered above, painting her face in sickly gold, cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass, eyes too old for the body they lived in. She pressed her mouth to the gap in the metal and whispered the words that would change two lives forever. "Do you have any expired cake?" Inside the bakery, Alexander Voss stood at the marble counter, signing off on a $10 million merger with a fountain pen that cost more than most people's rent. He had come for the midnight tasting of a new champagne truffle. His chain of luxury pastries demanded perfection, and perfection demanded his presence. The girl's voice floated through the cracked service door, thin but impossible to ignore. Alexander's pen paused. The lawyer across from him kept talking numbers, but the billionaire heard only the plea. He stepped into the alley without his coat. Rain soaked the cuffs of his bespoke shirt instantly. The girl froze, clutching a moldy croissant like contraband. Up close, she was smaller than he'd thought, maybe 12, maybe 15, malnutrition made age's guesswork. Her name, she said when he asked, was Mara. Just Mara. No last name, no story she wanted to tell. Alexander bought the entire display case that night. Not for resale, for Mara. He carried the boxes himself, arms shaking under the weight of buttercream and guilt. The bakery manager protested until Alexander slid a black card across the counter and told him to close early. Mara sat on the curb eating a 3-day-old red velvet, tears mixing with frosting on her chin. She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. The way she guarded each bite like it might vanish told him everything. He meant to leave after that. Drop a few hundreds, make a call to social services, return to his penthouse where problems came with non-disclosure agreements. But Mara followed him to the mouth of the alley, barefoot on wet pavement, and asked the question that pinned him in place. "Are you going to forget me tomorrow?" Alexander Voss, who had forgotten birthdays, anniversaries, and the names of 3 ex-wives, felt something crack inside his chest. He looked at the girl who weighed less than his golf bag and realized he had built an empire on indulgence while children scavenged sugar from trash. The hypocrisy tasted worse than the rain. He took her home. Not to a shelter, home. The doorman of his building stared as Alexander carried Mara past the crystal chandelier, her dirty sneakers leaving prints on Italian marble. He ran a bath in a tub that could fit a family of 4, poured lavender oil he'd never opened, and sat outside the door while she splashed like a duckling discovering water. When she emerged wrapped in a towel the size of a circus tent, her eyes held a new wariness. Trust, Alexander learned that night, was a currency more precious than his stock portfolio. The first week was war. Mara hoarded food under the guest bed, croissants, caviar, imported figs, until the stash attracted ants. She screamed when the vacuum cleaner roared to life, convinced it was a monster. She called Alexander, sir, in a tone that mocked the word, testing how far his patience stretched. He fired 3 nannies in 4 days, the 4th quit when Mara locked her in the wine cellar. Alexander cancelled a trip to Geneva, then Tokyo, then a board meeting that could have added another 0 to his net worth. His assistant threatened to resign. He told her to update her resume. One night, Mara woke screaming from nightmares of a mother who sold her for a hit and a father who never existed. Alexander found her in the kitchen at 3 a.m., eating raw cake batter with her hands. He sat on the floor beside her, "Tai askew," and asked what she dreamed about. She told him, foster homes that smelled of bleach and broken promises, alleys where older kids traded her body for protection, the day she learned that family was a word adults used to lie. When she finished, she waited for him to send her away. Instead, he opened the freezer and handed her a pint of chocolate gelato. They ate it straight from the container, 2 spoons, no words. The silence tasted like beginning. Alexander hired tutors, therapists, a nutritionist who specialized in kids who'd survived on ketchup packets. Mara learned to read in the library overlooking Central Park, her finger tracing words while snow fell outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. She still flinched at loud noises, still checked exits in every room, but slowly the apartment stopped feeling like a hotel. She claimed a corner of the couch, draped it in a blanket printed with cartoon dinosaurs, and declared it her fortress. Alexander bought her art supplies on a whim: watercolors, charcoals, a tablet that cost more than a car. Mara painted the alley where they met, but in her version, the dumpster overflowed with roses and the rain fell upward into a sky full of cake. The press smelled blood. Billionaire adopts street urchin, clickbait gold. Paparazzi camped outside the building. A tabloid published Mara's juvenile record: shoplifting, truancy, a joyride in a stolen Vespa. Alexander's PR team wanted a statement, a photo op, a carefully staged moment of benevolence. He fired the team instead. When a reporter cornered Mara outside her new school, she told him, "Mind your own damn business," and flipped him off with frosting still on her fingers. The clip went viral. Alexander watched it on loop in his office and laughed until he cried. But money couldn't buy everything. Mara's nightmares evolved. Now she dreamed of Alexander leaving, private jets, boardrooms, women in diamonds who didn't have track marks on their arms. She started skipping therapy, hiding report cards, picking fights with kids who called her charity case. One afternoon she vanished. Alexander found her 3 hours later in the same alley, knees to chest, staring at the bakery's back door like it might open and swallow her whole. "I knew you'd come," she said, but her voice shook. "Rich people always come back to make sure the poor kid's still grateful." Alexander sat in a puddle beside her. "I'm not rich," he said. "I'm bankrupt. I spent every dollar I had on hope, and you're the only asset left." Mara snorted. "That's the dumbest thing an adult has ever said." "Probably." He offered his hand. "Come home anyway." She took it. The turning point came on Mara's 15th birthday, though no one knew the exact date, so they picked the day she asked for expired cake. Alexander closed his flagship patisserie to the public and turned it into a wonderland. Balloons shaped like cupcakes floated to the ceiling. A string quartet played Taylor Swift badly. Mara wore a dress the color of strawberry frosting and sneakers with lights in the soles. She invited her entire class, the doorman, the therapist, even the barista who always gave her extra whipped cream. Alexander watched from the kitchen as Mara cut a 7-tier cake with a plastic sword, frosting smearing her chin exactly like their first night. When she caught his eye, she mouthed, "Thank you." He mouthed back, "Don't thank me yet." That night, Mara asked for the truth. "Why me?" They sat on the roof garden, city lights glittering below like spilled diamonds. "You could have written a check. Built a shelter. Gotten a tax write-off and a good night's sleep. Why keep me?" Alexander thought of his own childhood, private schools, absent parents, a mother who called once a year from St. Tropez. He had everything and nothing. "Because you asked for expired cake," he said finally. "And I realized my whole life was expiring, one merger at a time. You were the first real thing I'd touched in years." Mara leaned her head on his shoulder. "You're still an idiot. Certified." Years passed in brushstrokes. Mara graduated high school with a scholarship to RSD. She painted murals on abandoned buildings, scenes of children flying kites made of dollar bills, of dumpsters blooming into gardens. Alexander funded her first gallery show anonymously, then attended in a baseball cap pulled low. Critics called her work ferocious hope. Mara rolled her eyes but framed the review above her easel. At 21, she launched the Expired Cake Project. It started small, patisseries donating day-old goods to shelters. Then restaurants, then grocery chains. Mara's face, older now, scar on her eyebrow from a foster home fight, appeared on billboards with the slogan, "No1 expires." Alexander sat on the board but let her lead. When investors pushed for profit margins, Mara threatened to burn the business plan in front of them. They backed down. The night the Foundation served its millionth meal, Mara found Alexander in the original alley. The bakery had long since closed, but the dumpster remained, graffiti-tagged with roses. She carried a single cupcake, chocolate, slightly lopsided, sprinkles uneven. "Expired?" he asked. "Technically tomorrow." She handed it over. "But I figured we'd earned a head start." They sat on the curb where it all began. Sirens wailed in the distance. Somewhere, a kid was probably asking for cake that wouldn't come. Alexander peeled the wrapper with the same care he once used for million-dollar contracts. "Remember when you thought I'd forget you?" he said. Mara bumped his shoulder. "Still waiting." He took a bite. The cake was perfect, dense, fudgy, a little too sweet. "Never," he said around a mouthful. "You're stuck with me." "Good," she replied. "Because I'm adopting you next. Paperwork's a bitch, but I know a guy." Alexander laughed so hard he choked on sprinkles. Mara pounded his back, grinning like the feral kid who'd once guarded a moldy croissant with her life. The rain started again, soft this time, more memory than storm. They didn't move. Some moments deserve to get wet. Years later, when Mara's TED Talk broke the internet, 20 million views in a week, reporters asked what inspired her. She told them about a billionaire who heard a question in an alley and answered with his whole life. Alexander watched from the front row, anonymous in a sea of faces, eyes shining. When she finished, the audience rose in a standing ovation. Mara searched the crowd until she found him. She pointed. "That's my dad," she said into the microphone. "He used to be expired too." The camera cut to Alexander. He didn't hide. He waved, frosting still on his tie from the celebratory cake backstage. The internet exploded again, #ExpiredCakeDad trended for days. Alexander Voss, once known for hostile takeovers, became the man who proved wealth could buy second chances if you spent it on the right heart. And somewhere, in another alley, another kid whispered the magic words. The cycle continued, not perfect, not painless, but possible. Because once upon a time, a girl asked for cake that no one wanted, and a billionaire discovered he was starving too. They just needed each other to taste how sweet life could still be. If this story moved you, hit that like button. It's the digital equivalent of passing the plate for seconds. Subscribe for more tales of broken people finding whole futures, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next slice. Because every expired dream deserves a chance to rise.